So the government of Paris gave Pop and his team a 50-year contract to provide time to Paris. The Pneumatic Clock Company set up shop in the center of Paris and began working on the master clock. This
They
was
gave
an
him 50
extremely
years for
precise
50
clock
years.
that could run 24/7 without.
And I hope he don't pop off and get another 50 years.
Worked, we need to understand the general principles of mechanical clocks.
That was
In
good.
order to run
You don't have to
without
clap.
electricity.
What's up? Yo, we got another video by the guy Primal Space. The underground clocks of Paris. Now, I don't know what this is about. Obviously, it's about clocks in Paris. But let's just watch it, okay? I'm not going to do a lot of talking. Let's just hop into it. Go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and all that.
On the 21st of January, 1910, when a flash flood brought chaos to the city. Metros were flooded and buildings were destroyed. But more curiously, almost all the clocks around the city stopped at exactly 10:50, as if time itself had stopped amidst the chaos. These clocks were part of a special network of underground pipes that used bursts of air to synchronize time around the city. This genius system was created in 1880 by Austrian engineer Victor Popp, and just 5 years later, thousands of these clocks were placed all over the city in hotels, train stations, houses, schools, and public streets. We modeled this incredible system and the special machine at the heart of it to show you how a series of underground pipes and mechanical clocks kept an entire city in sync. Before the invention of accurate electrical clocks, time was hard to keep. Mechanical clocks would slowly drift out of sync, leaving everyone on slightly different times. Business meetings and train schedules were impossible, since no one would arrive at the right time. In fact, the idea of there being an exact time wasn't really a thing yet. Tower bells around the city would ring out to let people know which hour it was. But as cities became more civilized, knowing the time to the nearest hour was no longer good enough. There needed to be a way to make sure everyone was on the same time, down to the nearest minute. The idea was to have a master clock in the center of Paris that would send out a pulse each minute to synchronize every clock around the city. Sending the signals electronically was far too expensive, so Pop decided that sending bursts of air would be cheaper and more reliable. The clocks wouldn't have to be powered. The bursts of air would simply move all the clocks in the system at the same time. This idea had been tested out in Vienna a few years before, and it clearly demonstrated that having everyone on the same time was the way of the future. So the government of Paris gave Pop and his team a 50-year contract to provide time to Paris. The Pneumatic Clock Company set up shop in the center of Paris and began working on the master clock. This was an
50 years for 50 years.
That could run 24/7 without.
And I hope he don't pop off and get another 50 years.
We need to understand the general principles of mechanical clocks.
That was good. You don't have to clap.
Electricity. A spring or weight was typically used to provide energy. By raising a weight, energy is stored in the form of potential energy. When it is released, gravity pulls it down and the wheel spins. Of course, a clock that ran out after a couple seconds would be useless. So an escapement mechanism is added to slow down the weight and create a continuous pulse. As the gear turns, the escapement rocks back and forth like a pendulum, moving the gear at constant intervals and slowing down its release of energy. By changing the length of the pendulum, the clock can be tuned to run faster or slower. Adding a train of high-ratio gears slows down the system even more, meaning the weight can power the clock for an entire week without having to be reset. For the Paris master clock, it was split into two separate sides. On the left was a standard pendulum clock that drove the hour, minute, and second hands. The clock on the right was basically
That's why watches are so expensive when they're like handmade.
Of compressed air into the network
you actually have to put like mechanical mastery into that.
In the Paris Observatory, there was another super accurate clock
so cool.
that was updated daily using observations of stars and planets. A timekeeper would update the master clock if necessary, using the observatory clock as a reference. In order to see the observatory clock, which was in a different part of Paris, the timekeeper used AnyDesk, which gave him access to the clock's
He's
time.
capping, bro.
Just kidding.
Ah, bro.
System wouldn't be necessary if AnyDesk was around in 1880.
Is he?
AnyDesk.
Nah, this ad is goated. What?
Service that allows you to control your device from anywhere in the world.
That's
All
good.
animations in this
That is a
video
good
were
ad
made on a
right there.
MacBook
Nah,
and
you're
rendered on a PC. But when I'm
you're
traveling,
doing
I
well,
still
bro.
need to
You're
access
doing well
my
for
PC.
yourself.
With AnyDesk, I
Y'all
can
are
send
doing
the
well,
animation files directly to my
but
PC
I'm
and hit
skipping this
render
ad for
as if
sure.
I
That
were
was
around
great.
Paris. The
That
master
was
clock
great. That was
slash
so
primal space.
seamless. That was
In order to
W ad
synchronize every
placement.
clock around Paris,
I
the
gotta give
master
it to
clock
you.
had to
Go
be
ahead and get your bread,
extremely
bro.
precise. Both sides of the clock worked together to send out bursts of air to thousands of clocks connected to the system. At the start of each minute, the left-hand clock would start counting down, while the right-hand clock would be locked in place by a lever.
Okay.
Once the left clock reached the 60th second, a tooth at the top gear activated the lever, which released the right clock and allowed its gears to start spinning.
Okay, you gotta
Instead of an
spin your
escape
gears.
whip to limit the speed, the right clock had a simple fan fly, which used its
Ooh,
own
that's
drag
cool.
to slow the gears down. This would allow the clock to run for about 20 seconds until the lever locked back in place. When the
Okay.
gears turned, a rod attached to one of the main gears was activated. This opened a valve that would allow compressed air to flow into the distribution pipe. The
Okay.
valve would remain open for the first 20 seconds of each minute and closed for the remaining 40 seconds. This created a 20-second period every minute where air could flow to all the clocks in the network.
That's
One
so
of the best
cool,
things
bro.
about
The
this
airflow
entire system was its
underground.
ability to reset itself once the weights had fallen.
That's so
A thin
dope.
pipe leading off from the distribution pipe fed the compressed air back
Let me
into
actually
two
make a note of
pistons
that
at the
for
side
like
of the clock. This would raise two levers attached to both.
I'm actually gonna make a note of that for a future reference. For an aspect of the world in a fantasy series that I'm working on. Let me actually note that. That's so cool.
Clock systems, lifting up the weights and resetting both clocks without interrupting the cycle. But where did the air go after leaving the master clock?
Where
From
did
there,
it?
the air would split into 10 different pipes that were each
Excuse me.
assigned to different districts around Paris. These would carry the air into iron pipes that ran for hundreds of kilometers through the sewage and metro tunnels of Paris. As the compressed air entered the pipes, it would quickly start sending a pressure wave through the entire system, taking up to a minute to reach some of the furthest clocks. But what actually happened when the air reached the clock? The clocks themselves were very simple. The minute hand was connected to a gear that had exactly 60 teeth. As the air reached the clock, it entered into a bellows, which would inflate and push a rod upwards. This lifted the main lever, which pushed the gear along with an articulated tooth. On the other side, another tooth would stop the gear from moving backwards. Once the bellows fell back down, the tooth would pivot, and a small weight would keep it engaged with the gear. This clever mechanism meant that a full inflation of the bellows would always push the gear forward by exactly 1 minute.
Got it.
The hour hand was connected to the minute gear using a ratio of 1 to 12, meaning
1 to
that the minute
12.
hand would complete 12 rotations in the time it took the hour
Oh,
hand
that it
to
takes
complete
the-
1.
That makes
The
sense.
great
Yeah,
thing about this
yeah,
system
because it's
was that it
based on a
wasn't just
number
for
of
public
grooves,
street
right?
clocks or train stations. Anyone could
And
have
you
these
use a
clocks
larger
installed in
gear
their
and
house
larger
for a
gear with
subscription
more
fee of
grooves
just
to
30
slow it
cents per
down
day
before it
in
takes
today's
the
money.
next turn.
Despite being
the smaller
damaged in
ones.
the Great Flood of 1910, this incredible system continued to work for almost 50 years and ended in 1927 when accurate electronic clocks were good enough to keep time. By now, these clocks
so
are
I
long
just never
gone,
knew that.
but signs of where these clocks once stood can be found all around Paris.
Victor
And
Pop
now, time for
put
the
his
Primal
name on
Space
the
giveaway.
map.
The winner of the previous giveaway
He
is
literally,
Ethan.
I've never
Congrats.
seen
In the
Paris,
next
so I
video,
would have never
we'll be
even
giving
like
away
seen
another
this
one of our
to
Primal Space
reference it.
Voyager posters.
I wasn't
All
looking
you
that
need to
deeply.
do
That's
is
so
sign up to the
cool. I
link
want to go to
below,
Paris. though,
like
and
the
see
video,
that.
and leave a
I
comment
want to look for
saying
those
what
when I
you
go to
think
Paris.
about this incredible
That's so
clock.
clean, man. That's so cool. Honestly, I had to make a whole note about that. Let me put that. Which section should I put it in? Random world elements, random world cultural elements. Let's do that. Random cool inventions, cool locations. Yeah, we'll do those too. Yeah, that's so dope. With that being said, let me know what y'all think about the video. If y'all liked it too, let's go ahead and wrap this up. This is the third video today. I feel good. We got 3 in here, 3 in 1, boy. Let's go. Like, comment, subscribe. Bye.